For me, Brooklyn was cliques and gangs and violence and death and joy, man. And it's like this weird joy.
Welcome back to Hometown Friends, where we explore the friendships that are foundational to who we are today. My name is Chandler Hoffman, and this podcast is all about where we belong and who we belong with. It was my mother's recent death and reflecting on who I grew up with in Berkeley, California, that sparked this project, as it was my hometown friends that were foundational to who I am today, and I'm on a mission to explore the small and big ways that friendships shape our lives. Today, my guest is Antoine Joyce, who's a senior vice president of a youth organization in Dallas, Texas. Antoine and I met at a conference where we shared a goal of learning about the profound experience of belonging. He shares his experience of growing up in his hometown of Brooklyn, New York, and specifically in the neighborhoods of Bedford-Stuyvesant and Brownsville. And he tells us the stories about his friends who helped him navigate those neighborhoods. Antoine and his crew of academically achieving friends experienced gang violence, poverty, and systemic racism, and were able to create a sense of belonging in a few ways. You'll hear from him about how he formed his own gang called the Card Family, and he became a part of a dance group which provided him with a sense of identity and allowed him the freedom to explore the city together with that crew. Antoine shares his journey of discovering his love for performing in and then producing talent shows, which not only led to his chosen career, but solidified an impermeable bond with his hometown friends. Antoine emphasizes the loyalty, honesty, and confidence-giving nature of these friendships, and he highlights the willingness to be vulnerable and share both joys and struggles with these friendships. Finally, Antoine encourages listeners to reach out to their friends and cherish these meaningful connections because we never know when our friends will not be here anymore. And he knows this firsthand because he recently returned to New York to attend a funeral of one of his beloved homies. I want to dedicate this episode to Big Will and all the hometown friends that we've lost. Their light lives on in all of us. Antoine Joyce, welcome to the Hometown Friends podcast.
Thank you, my boy. Chandler, what's good, man?
Tell me about how we met. Tell me your story about how we met.
So this othering and belonging conference, right? So just take that for a second, right? A conference. And if anybody knows about going to conferences, right, there's this social anxiety of conferences, right? You're like, I'm going because I'm interested in the subject, which this subject is othering, so not othering people and creating belonging, right? It's John A. Powell Institute of Othering and Belonging. And the first day I'm there, because I think we met on day 2, I get there, I sit down, and I just kind of like, I keep to myself. I may bump into a few people. And you know how you look across the room and you see people, you're like, they seem like it feels like lunchroom in grade school.
Yeah, that's a great image.
Yeah, who's going to be my friend, right? You're looking around, you got your tray of food, and you're like, who's going to talk to me? Like, am I interesting enough? You're creating stories about people in your head, and you just like, I'm going to just stick to myself. You know what I'm saying? And I think day 1, I kind of just like stuck to myself while surveying, like, I want to get to know. And I'm like trying to make my way to find a seat. And I'm like, guess I got to go back to the balcony. And then where I sat in the balcony before was full. So I make my way to the other side of the balcony. And I'm like, seat is open. And I'm like, I'm just going to just be antisocial, go to the top, sit in this corner. And I literally went to the corner and I kind of just like, give me a good view and whatever. And then you were just sitting there cool and you let me pass. And then I just looked, and I was telling you earlier, man, I looked at the hat. The belonging hat. I was like, this dude makes that hat look cool. Not anything, and I don't know, what I'm saying? You were sitting there, and I was like, whatever. Then something happened before it started or whatever. You just looked over, and I just looked over, and it was kind of like, excuse my language, but I'm like, don't be a dick. You know what I'm saying? Like, say what's up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we both sitting here.
Yeah.
And we're both in this space, so obviously there's some connection that has to be there, right? We're both here for belonging.
Right.
So I think I just like looked over and was like, what's good? Like, what's up?
Yep. Yep. Why'd you want to be on this podcast, Antoine?
But I think about like, I have friends who have been instrumental to my life. And then when I really think about it though, sometimes I'm like, do I know anything about them? Right.
Yeah.
And so the grappling I have sometimes is with like, does knowing, and I could get to a nerdy thing, not too, about knowing, because my founder of our organization was into these things of not knowing, right? And actually, I probably can't get too nerdy, but he was great at this stuff. But
No worries.
it's like, do you need to know someone for them to have an impact on your life, right? Do you need to know someone for them to be a friend? So when you was talking to me about that, it was part of my grappling. So I was like, I got friends, and in my soul, I like, these are my aces, you know what I'm saying? Like every time I go back home to New York, I'm living in Dallas now, there's like 3 people I will go see off the bat, right? No matter
Yes.
what.
Yeah, you get it. You that right away when we were speaking in the hallway, and I just said, I'm a psychologist. I've just launched this podcast about hometown friends. And you were like, oh, I have some hometown friends. And we started vibing about it. Like, oh, what are these kinds of people? Why are they different to us? What do they do for us? Who are they? Right. So you can see that you're obviously attuned to this idea that friendships make a difference in our lives and that they're important to us. And they're actually like the thing, I think, that especially they're just different. They're different from family. They're chosen. They do something different for us. Tell us about your hometown. Where you from? And bring us back a little bit to where you come from.
I was born in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn.
Yes, sir.
And when I talk to young people, saying that I quote unquote mentor or trying to inspire, they'll look at me like, the ones here in Dallas, like, so I say, if you don't know Bed-Stuy, if you've seen Everyone Hates Chris, that was based in Bed-Stuy. If you heard of Jay-Z, Biggie Smalls, they lived in Bed-Stuy. The music is from Bed-Stuy, right?
Yep. And if you're old like me, do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Classic Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood story. Okay. And I lived there until I was maybe 6, maybe 7.
Okay.
And my mother's gone now, so I don't have these answers. And that's, again, part of my grappling is like, how do I want to learn about myself? Does it matter today to the person I am today? So my next memory is house hopping. I didn't know that I was unhoused or homeless at the time, because my mother, I remember a distinct memory of my mother and my brother's father, my stepdad, you could call him, having an argument.
Okay.
And me not seeing him in the house again.
Right.
Fast forward, we'd end up living in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And a lot of my formidable first friendships outside of quote unquote family is in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Gotcha.
Grade school. And then we moved back to Bed-Stuy, and until I moved to Dallas, I lived in Bed-Stuy my whole life. Wow. So I claim Bed-Stuy, but Brownsville is also a big part of my growing up.
What was it like growing up in Brooklyn? Tell us.
Man, so there's this beauty to it. Like every, saying, I think everyone would look at their childhood and they go, man, here's the joys of it, right? It was the concrete jungle, man. It was bicycles. It was making a way out of like shittiness, man. Right. Like burnt down houses that you can jungle gym over. Right. Concrete slides, like literally concrete slides. Like who the hell does that? Right.
Yeah.
In a park.
You got to get like something under your butt on a concrete slide, right? You got to get like a little piece of paper or a little piece of
right. but you figured it out, right? You know what I'm saying? The fun wasn't even a slide down. The fun was just like climbing up this pyramid looking shaped thing. And it was
Wow.
like, okay, now how are we going to get down now that you high up above the world, right?
Nice.
It was making forts or making like home bases out of broken wood and throwing away materials in an empty lot, what I'm saying, in
Yeah.
Brownsville, right? It was the bus, or the cab ride across town. I took 25 minutes when say on Thanksgiving, right? You know what I'm saying? Brooklyn was, I mean, it was also scary, gang violence, man. You know,
Yeah.
I I remember my middle school, Delma J. Hamilton, 275 is that
Nice.
school on Rockaway Avenue. And
Shout out.
yeah. Shout out to all those who went to 275, right? And it sat in this weird place, man. On one side, there was these housing projects called the Pinks. And then on the other side, there was a middle class neighborhood housing development. So it wasn't projects, it wasn't New York City Housing Authority, but high rises,
Okay.
condo.
Interesting.
So we called them the co-ops. And partly because of poverty, the Pinks hated the co-ops.
Right.
Crazy thing is, though, right? Brownsville is a historically poor neighborhood.
Right.
So even though these families lived in this nicer living establishment, we all still went to 275 together, man. And we all kind of like were poor adjacent.
Right.
But the co-op kids had to fend for themselves because the Pink's kids created gangs. And so there was constant fighting between the two, man.
Wow.
So you had these days where it was like, Monday and Wednesday was co-op and Pinks fighting, right? And then Wednesday, 263 would come and everything. It was like clockwork. Fridays, you had the notorious gang called the Decepticons, named after the TV show, the Autobots, Transformers, right?
Right.
And when I YouTube Decepticons sometimes, man, it's like, yo, this gang was huge throughout New York City.
Really.
It rivaled the Blood and Crips style, right? It
Right.
was our version of that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, you had gangs called the Low Lives who only wore polo and, saying you didn't mess with them. You had gangs who only wore Guess. So it's like everyone was clicking up.
Yep.
So New Brooklyn was cliques and gangs and violence and death and
Damn.
joy, man. And it's like
Yes.
this weird joy that, that you love going to Betsy Head Park, even though they peed in the pool, it's like you're still the hangout, you know what I'm saying? Right? But you get your bike around the Betsy Park field, and it was where I learned how to ride a bike at, man. And,
Love it.
got teased at when I couldn't ride a bike, so I was determined to ride a bike. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Just to be with these guys, with these friends.
Yeah. Well,
So
you're saying some things that I love. A couple things. First of all, this othering, like we're starting with this theme of othering and belonging, and you're like basically talking about how people are getting a sense of belonging by being identified with certain kinds of people, right?
yeah.
So your school, your neighborhood, your projects, right? The Pinks and the co-ops, the gang, right? Why do people join gangs? Because we want to feel a sense of identity and belonging, correct?
Yeah, that's fact. So here's another part about me growing up, right? And I ping pong around. So if you're trying to
No,
follow where I'm at in the story, just ask because
you're good. You're good.
it's one life, right?
I love it.
So my mom, doing the math, my mom had me at 19.
Mm-hmm.
She was on welfare, saying for most of that time that I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about from to about 12, 13 years old. We were raised on welfare, so I don't remember my mother having a job
Mm-hmm.
until she got an associate's degree, and then became I guess they call him a case manager for the welfare system.
Oh, nice.
So I always find this interesting kind of thing. Like we were the ones getting food stamps,
Yes.
and she became the one giving them.
Yeah, that's great. I share that with you, Antoine. Growing up in poverty, interesting way of being. Definitely, there's a hustle to it, right? There's always,
Yeah,
and there's a sense of being othered a lot.
all the time. Telling somebody the other day, like the first memories that come are food stamps,
Yep.
right? And learning the savviness, and like it's not an EBT card like we have today. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
No, I remember exactly what they look like.
Right.
The little hairs in them, like how they were made out of paper, and they
Yep.
have like these little fibers in them. It's kind of like a bill. If you look at a bill, you'll see the fibers. They were that, and they were in that book that had like the little thing where you tear them off like a check.
Yeah.
The perforations. I remember them perfectly.
You had to be savvy enough if somebody's behind you. You don't want them to know you're on food stamps because I'll say this: every black mama, say that I know. I live in a black neighborhood, right? There's like, you don't tell people your business, so you hold that book up and you kind of like look behind who's looking, and then you kind of take it out, you tear it out, kind of whatever, you slide it under so that the person behind you don't see that. Oh, government assistance,
Yeah, I hated that, Antoine. I hated to. I don't know why. I mean, I know why. Mom's going to the store. We're in the line, and then she pulls out the food stamps, and everybody else had money, and that made me so embarrassed. I feel so bad about it, but because it saved us. I mean, obviously, without it, we wouldn't have had food. So I'm so appreciative that we actually had food. But man, I was so embarrassed about it. And that's the identification. I did not want to be identified with being poor.
Right.
Who does?
Who does? Right. Yeah. So yeah, man. So all that's happening, man. So that's and school was just like, school and the friends, man. It was like we all navigated that. Like today, I couldn't tell you about that struggle for Orville or Derek or Jomo or Antoine, whatever like that. I think we had a shared experience, saying we all had free lunch, but, it was just kind of like that unsaid thing that we all just shared without sharing it.
Right.
And tell you if that was their experience of it. But like you said, they didn't judge me for what I didn't have, or if my shoes had holes in them or something like that.
Which is the belonging part, right? That's why what we were talking about at this conference is how every person, human being, needs the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
They thrive when they have a sense that we belong to something else, whether it's to our hometown, to our neighborhood, to our families, to this friend group.
In junior high school. So by this time, let me talk about maybe 4 or 5 of my friends, right?
Fantastic.
I'll go back to living in Brownsville. When we moved to Brownsville, I attended a school right across the street from my house, of my apartment, 183 PS 183, General Daniel Chappie James Jr. I remember this, man. I remember this small auditorium, man. And over the years, I had these steady friends: Orville Francis, Joe Mohemans, Derek. Oh my God, Derek Smith, and Anika Gibbs, and Amina Gartier. And Amina's special in another way. We can get to that later, right?
Okay. All right.
So we were all in a smart class. So that's the thing that we shared, right? Was this, they ranked the classes. We were in the top class from first grade all the way to 6th grade. We always ranked in the top class. So we developed this friendship over that, if you will, was competitive with each other to get the best grades, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But it was like this good nagging on, right? And I think, early before we started recording, man, we were talking about misfits, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't cool. I don't think I was cool. My memory of all of us, I don't think we were cool. We were the nerds.
Right.
We kept each other safe, and and there were kids who were quote unquote bullies or whatever, and it's like you stayed away from them. And anytime you got in between that, you had to learn how to take an ass whooping or give an ass whooping. And I remember, we weren't fighters. So,
Right.
so the funny thing I remember about them, it wasn't like we scrapped together.
Mm-hmm.
We just had each other's back to look out each other's wounds.
Right. So people paid you attention.
Yeah.
Like these are the people that were your people. These were your people that you were with, and whatever happened to you or any of them, you kept together.
We kept together. Yeah. And,
that's friendship.
So going into junior high school, to the question you asked, we were invited to take on what I believe today was an experiment. SP classes. I forget what the SP stands for. So, most of us were smart enough to be invited to take this test called Prep for Prep, which would allow us to go to prep school for free, right? Taking poor kids basically out of poor neighborhoods and giving them this privileged experience. When we got to junior high school and we in this SP class, they separated us from the rest of the students in this weird way, that then we were also having internal school conflict because they named the classes L and A's. I forget what it's still for or whatever. So we just called them the LAs.
Nice.
And the LAs hated the SPs.
Right.
Because we were the smart kids, and we were in 7 SP, and 7 SP, the experiment was, can we do 7th and 8th grade in 1 year?
So accelerate
our learning. So,
wow.
So we did 7th, 8th grade 1 year, and then next year we was in 9 SP. So some students didn't, and they had 8 SP, but they were still smarter than whatever. But regardless, they hated the SPs.
Yes.
And there was one kid in the class who was smart, but he was street smart as well, named Tyron. So not Tyrone, Tyron.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He helped us create a game.
Wow.
Yeah. And somebody
of the smart kids, basically. The smart kids gang.
Yeah.
Oh, love it.
So, we had, saying this other dude, Kareem, we had a few cats that were tough enough to know how to handle situations, whatever. And we created this clique called the Card Family.
Okay, tell us about that.
Kareem was a short dude who was like, yo, I just remember like he was, again, smart kid, but you didn't want to fuck with him. You didn't want to cross his, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he was Ace because Antoine and I had the same name. So he was a bigger dude. He became Big Joker and I was Little Joker. So, and it was and see, that was those middle school years was interesting because when I look back at them, it was an exploration of, do we remain nerds or enter into this other life, right? I remember Kareem, like I got 2 tats now, but on this arm, remember Kareem was like, I want to give you a tattoo. He took an eraser and rubbed my skin till it basically rubbed off. And it was like, I want to create a scab.
Right.
So then when it heals, you're going to have this outline, whatever. And he rubbed the A, and I sat there in pain while Kareem homemade tattoo myself. My mother kicked my ass for that, man.
He erasered your skin.
Yeah,
Damn. So that was that accelerated thing that you did. You skipped a couple grades. You're in the smart crew. You're into, like, from the get, you were a gifted kid. You had a certain kind of mind that would make school easy or a manageable, and actually you're achieving really early in school, and you found your people with other kids that had the same experience,
Right.
right?
And,
Mm-hmm.
and you as a psychologist probably heard this many times, right? When you're bored, you start figuring out other ways to learn. So we were killing classes. So it's kind of like my mother never. I don't think my mother ever knew I skipped class because I never got in trouble for it
Right.
because I never failed the test.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm
You
saying?
the tests weren't the thing that you were challenged by.
No, but what tends to happen? I was listening again. I was listening to you and your boy talking. Right, is I went to a different middle. I went to a different high school,
Right.
and we all, saying at least in that 9SP class, we graduated to go to these premier high schools. So after middle school, I went to I got accepted into a program, a med science program at a school called Midwood High School, which was to me, it's like the middle of Brooklyn. It was next to a college campus. I've never been on a college campus, never been near one before. At that time, again, I'm young, so probably 12.
Wow.
Most kids are starting school at 14. I'm 12 in 10th grade.
Damn.
You know,
Damn. Now let's stop there for just a second. Man, Antoine, that's a different experience, right?
yeah,
That's you say you're a misfit. I can see that feeling like you're a misfit. You're young. You're not actually emotionally as old as everybody else.
it was because one, if you're a New Yorker, right, we learned how to take public transportation early. So that wasn't an issue.
Right.
By this time, my mother had moved us back to Bedford-Stuyvesant, and I had to take this one bus that connected me. So you got to walk. Had to walk a bunch of blocks to get to the bus. That took me all the way down, and you can see the neighborhoods change. And I always remembered leaving my neighborhood and what I knew. Right,
Yeah.
the broken glass, the streets, the tattered buildings, the poverty,
Yes.
but it was normal to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then there was this one point where the bus crosses, and it's like, that's a big house. Who has a gate around a house? Like there's blocks of houses and there's blocks of trees and beautiful trees and stuff like that. And then you get off this bus in this area, and it's so nice today. I'll be honest, I go back to the area, I'm like, this is
Really?
really, like, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
you know, but then it was just like,
It's
wow,
different.
what's this? What's this? It's a connection of hubs of trains and buses. This beautiful college campus that you can walk through, and it's like peaceful gardens and things like that. And then the school, man, was majestic to me. Like the schools I remember were just small, brown brick, kind of flat faced with bars around them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing exciting about the school. So to me, all schools looked like that, felt like that. Midwood it looked like what those college buildings look. It was art deco,
Mm-hmm.
cathedral styled, whatever, big front door, lot of steps up to it that, saying it's like,
The
wow.
architecture made a difference.
Yeah, man.
It made you feel a different way.
Yeah.
That's
And
deep.
even if there was a gate around it, like the gate wasn't as like the gates back in Bed-Stuy were like keep you in and keep people out. It
Yeah.
was like jail gates, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Fuck.
This didn't feel like it was meant to keep you out. It was like, uh,
I love that word, majestic. It was
yeah.
magical to you.
They wore clothes that were different, right? I always tell this part, like I remember sitting in class, and everybody knows what this is now, but back then it's like sitting in class and these two white boys with Letterman jackets on, and they're throwing a ball across the room with a stick. I'm like, what the hell is these kids doing? and it's just a stick with a net on it. And I'm like, what is this? And his teacher's like, they're the lacrosse team. What are you talking about? What's you know see? Like,
That's a great image, Antoine. I
you
played
know,
lacrosse in high school. I didn't. I learned about it in 10th grade. But that's funny because in New York, that's like an old, it's old and deep roots in New York is lacrosse. Yeah,
yeah. I just
but not in your neighborhood.
out of my neighborhood, like
Nope.
nobody had a stick to throw a little ball up. Like what? And they
Nope.
were fly with it too. They was catching. I'm like, yo, this is weird back in the
I bet.
style.
I
Right?
bet.
So it was just that was the difference of that school. But when I say again, when I go back to the culturaliness,
Mm-hmm.
we would talk about vacations out of the country.
Right.
She would talk about summers and things, and kids would. After a while, I started to realize like kids were doing things outside of school that I was not doing.
Right.
So I started to retreat
Mm-hmm.
in my socialism, in my socialness in the school because I realized I didn't have a lot in common with y'all.
Gotcha.
So in some ways, I othered myself
Yeah.
out of things because after school, I'm having these experiences of trying to catch this bus with my free bus pass.
Yep.
I remember bumping into a white woman and her feeling so disgusted by this accident. So I was trying to run for the bus and I got grabbed by this police officer and having this really tense experience of like him telling me like I had to be careful, and in the way he said it and pointed to her, it was like, I didn't mean to run into this woman,
Right.
saying like, wondered like, where you going? Yeah.
I see.
Saying,
Yep.
and the questions, and it was the first time someone asked me this a long time ago, and I couldn't think of this moment, but now it's like the first time I felt racism
Yeah.
was then. It was like, why was that a problem?
Yep.
I couldn't understand it, and then things just kept happening that I could not figure out what it was.
Oh, okay. So I wondered what happened after that.
I remember another, I'll tell this quick, my Spanish teacher was like, you can help him at home with his homework. And my mother was like, oh, I work after school, after he's
Right.
done. And she goes, oh, you work. And again, it was years later that it played that back in my head. I'm like, my mother was so upset and I couldn't get it then, like that tone, like, oh, you work?
Damn.
It's like, so she took me out of that school and I end up going to a school in Bed-Stuy, boys and girls high school.
Gotcha.
But the other part about that was cool was, so I have two older cousins. So my oldest cousin, his name is, we call him DJ Demo because he's a DJ. That's
Nice.
his name, Demo. He was a DJ. He made music, mixtapes for his brother. My cousin Selwyn, or as we used to call him, Sir Love.
Nice.
Him and his neighbors, they lived in the projects. They started a dance group, and they would dance around the city. So
Right.
they all went to Boys and Girls.
Okay.
When I got to Boys and Girls, I was immediately in the cool kid category because they had this kind of recognition already. Like, oh, those are the kids that dance.
Gotcha.
Like, who you?
Right.
I'm the kid that dances with them.
Those are my people.
Those my people.
Right. Did you dance at that time, or were you or did you learn how to as you went along?
So I forget the year. There's probably this pivotal year, maybe 91 or something like that, that I learned how to dance because of them.
You were mastering your body. I love that about dancers in general. Like, I'm always in awe of dancers. I love to dance, but and I just love music, and hip hop was a big part of my upbringing too. But the fact that people like move their bodies the way they do, And it's amazing. Like I have a lot of respect for dancers in general, but tell us about dancing in Brooklyn and growing up in the high school and being a part of a dance troupe.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, it was, again, this is all about friends, man. Like,
Yes.
my cousin and his neighbors became, so at that time, saying, Walter, who's still my boy, he's my son's godfather.
Nice.
He's, we don't have to talk at all. And I could text Walter right now. I'm like, yo, and he'll be like, what you need? You know what I'm saying? So dancing, man, it was, you talked about it with in the other podcast, like biking gave you freedom. You just said it. It gave you freedom. Dancing was our freedom.
Gotcha.
It allowed us to meet people all around the city, these Bed-Stuy kids who are now not only have friends of other dancers in Bed-Stuy, obviously made us, chick magnets, whatever like that. But then you like, oh, some girls having a party in the Bronx, and you're like, oh, that dance group, that dude?
Nice.
You ever been to the Bronx? Nah. We're gonna hop on a train, we're gonna get to the Bronx today, because
right.
So it was a way of like,
damn. It put you together with other people. People were attracted to you. You actually had something to give.
Yeah.
And to identify with.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And we were all funny and kind of just like, we were kids trying to figure out the world still, but we all had this kind of inquisitiveness of just like people and whatever, and people was just interested in us, but we was also interested in people. And people will call and say, oh, you want to do a music video? And we did a music video with Whitney Houston, and,
wow,
Foxy Brown and Lost Boys and some others and so forth. And you got paid for it. And you're like, yo, wow, hip hop can pay you.
Wow.
Boys and Girls High School was the principal then, Frank Mickens, hard-nosed, kind of like Joe Clark from Lean On Me type character, right? He put on the building the pride and joy of Bed-Stuy.
Nice.
It was a neighborhood school that you had to interview to be in.
Okay.
And it wasn't about academics. It was like making leaders, making men, making women. You're not going to come to this school and fuck it off. So here's the funny thing, right? So take the dance group, right? We're now doing talent shows around the city under this program banner, AllStar's Talent Show Network.
Okay.
And the talent shows will bring us in proximity with each other. So the beauty about the talent shows is that the purpose of them was not to focus on competition. It was like, how do you build community? So prior to shows, we have these workshops where we had to meet each other and learn each other and get to connect with each other. Then the producer of the shows at the time, a woman named Pam Lewis, one of my, what I would consider my first true mentor, she made this statement on stage: I'm looking for youth producers. And I'm like, huh, I've been dancing in these talent shows for a while. What does it mean, a youth producer? I'm looking for leaders. I'm looking for whatever. She had all these words, whatever, that made me go, huh. Some of it was vanity, like, oh, I could be in charge of the show. Nice. I love these shows now. So I joined this meeting that she had. And two people were there, Lenny and this dude named Vision. And I met Vision at another show, kind of just bumped into him. We knew a girl named Khadijah. She was like, Vision? I'm like, I don't know the dude. So, well, he got my ticket. And I'm like, okay, saying? And then if you meet Vision today, he's still the same way. It's kind of like, I could just tell you characteristics: loud, boisterous, confident, kind of squirrely, saying disheveled looking, kind of whatever, and don't care.
Nice.
And that don't careness was confident enough that he don't have to be the best dressed, but everyone will know who he is in the room.
So he's holding court.
Yeah.
That's the kind of leader he is. His personality is leadership.
Yeah.
But with the confidence that he has in himself. Interesting. Yeah. Go ahead. So, okay, we got L and we got Vision in this leadership group that you joined.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
and our job was to produce talent shows. So we both from Brooklyn. I mean, all three of us from Brooklyn, you know, and L was the leader of his camp, if you will, as the production producer, curator, whatever. So he was just musically sound and yada yada. Vision, again, he can hold court anywhere. Just had this knack of just like being out there. You know what I'm saying? And I end up being the MC of the talent shows.
Okay.
And the talent shows were so huge. People was like, "Oh, when is the talent show?" It's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, whatever, like that." Let me get your number. I'll make sure you
Yes.
know. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like,
It was a great opportunity.
so we became wingmen. We was like
Okay.
just always there, and our boy Slim, saying he was a great singer, whatever, like that. It was just like we just out there now doing this. So
Wow.
I'm no longer dancing, no longer rapping. I'm now producing these shows. Yeah. Yeah. So these my two, man. These my two dogs, man. Like, and we still, so Vision House in Philly, and, we don't talk as much, but it's like, yo, I'm getting married, come to my wedding. He's like, all right. You know what
Nice.
I'm saying? They don't even say much. It's like, all right. And then he shows up.
Nice.
I'm like, where's your wife, man? He's like, oh, she couldn't make it. Then I get to the wedding. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, she working. I was like, like he don't need the RSVP. He just needs to just like, if Vision just shows up right now, it's kind of like, if Vision called me right now and was like, yo, I'm at your door, I probably wouldn't be like, hold on, let me run down. I'd be like, buzz you in, get to the fridge, I see you in a second.
Because that is the kind of friendship. That's what friendship is. And when it means that much, when you've spent that much time together, when you've done so much, when you've appreciated each other, maybe you don't take it for granted, but it's so effortless. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to think, man. We, and I ain't gonna tell all our business because some of it is like, but we got into trouble together.
Yep.
We got out of trouble together. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like, again, kind of like I was saying, like my elementary school friends, there's no judgment, man. There's like, I may rag him sometimes and be like, yo, dude, you couldn't get your hair braided today? He's like, eh.
Well, that's one of the it's one of the things you said in the survey, and that I'm finding in this podcast, man, is how important to have a friend that you feel not judged by, that you can be all of yourself, no matter what that is that day or who you've been in the past, that someone is there that does not judge you or accepts you for everything you are.
Yeah, that's that dude. Yeah.
Super important in life to have these people in our lives. That doesn't happen all the time.
No.
And friendships, I think, do that more than even family sometimes.
They both are the dudes that if I'm going through something, if I'm going through something, I can complain to Vision and he'll just listen.
Nice.
One of the hardest times in my life, I will share this,
Please.
saying, again, we used to club a lot, and I would borrow a vehicle that, I had access to. So I had access to it, but outside of the parameters of using it for the reason it's supposed to be used, you shouldn't be using this vehicle.
Gotcha.
Woke up one morning because I didn't bring it back in time, and got this call. It's like, yo, they thought the vehicle was stolen. And it's like, oh shit. And I looked out the window and I'm like, stolen? And then I looked out the window and I realized, oh shit, I stole the vehicle. Because I'm not supposed to have it.
Right.
And I'm sitting on the phone with my superiors here and like, all right, I'm coming in. And I'm like figuring out like, what the fuck do I do? Do I tell the truth now? Do I whatever? And, and you make a bad decision. So I think my goal was to leave it abandoned and have it, picked up or get a parking ticket or whatever like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Not a smart thought, you know what I'm saying? But, got in the car, freaked out, was not thinking you're driving a car, not looking. I crashed into 4 cars.
Wow.
Totaled all 4 of the cars.
Yikes.
Got freaked out. There was a bunch of people outside. Got scared. So I ran.
Yep.
Got picked up by the police. Organization didn't press charges though. They took on the responsibility of all the damages and all the stuff. Wasn't the best moment of my life, but the first person I went to was Vision.
Yep.
Just be like, yo, and we just sat there. It was like, you're telling somebody like, yo, I just stole a van. I was sitting in jail for like 5 hours, and I might get fired. And it's just like,
Yeah.
So,
listening, just being there and being present and not judging you and being with you so that you could download this really painful experience of self guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And what the hell do I do? Having someone witness this. What is different about these friendships that you grew up with that are hometown friends, as I'm calling them, than the other people? Because you obviously we met and we quickly became connected. So you must have a lot of other friends, but these people that you have grown up with, who you've experienced them, what's different about these hometown friends? Help us articulate this thing.
Then you have the friends, saying who are those moment friends, right? In that moment when I needed to belong to something in the world, when I needed to be a part of that talent show, when I needed to, not join a gang again, the dance group gave me an opportunity to find ultimately the thing that I would belong to for the rest of my life, which was this organization where I meet Vision and L and a few others, right? So the main difference about them and my first time hometown friends is that L and Vision, and I even talk about Fame, one of my DJ buddies, and just others like that. They're now like lifetime.
Yeah.
Like right now,
the current.
They're still current.
They're from the hometown, but they continue to be current. Yeah.
And you don't need them all every day. And I had to move to Dallas. I had to make new friends, which was hard. I had to make friendships in a place that I lived. So I was lonely here before I met my wife and all the stuff. So I got friendships now that I may call on, rely on for information or say something, whatever, So the difference about them two and maybe a few others is that they span 3 major points of my life. They span relationship trauma, relationship happiness, raising children, my passions, my visions, my goals, career, and now being married, It's like they all have spanned that.
One of the things you said, and maybe another thing I'd like to ask you is like, what's a friend? What is the definition of a friend? And you said a couple things, and I'll remind you, this loyalty, right? Yeah. Someone who you could leave your kids with if you go out of town. You said this. You also said you could be completely honest with. And then one of the things I love the most is their confidence giving.
Sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable with people. Definitely. You've ever built that relationship, and it's like, no, I can say that to L, I can say that to Vision, I can say that to Fame, I can say that to Demo. And it was like, like, yo.
I love it. I love it. It's so important to have these people in your life and in our lives. And the folks from our hometown can really do that for us. Doesn't mean that all friendships, I always say it, all friendships are good. And the fact that you and I hooked up at a conference, haven't known each other but a couple months, but that you're here and I'm getting to know you, some of these stories, and I'm getting to know these dudes from your memories. And, it makes me want to meet these guys because they are important to you, which is what you were saying about your friends, seeing how other people are important to other people. And that because you've had these experiences. Yeah. I want to thank you so much for your time Antoine. And any last words, any takeaways of how this was for you?
Prior to this, you gave us a survey.
Yeah.
That kind of gets us thinking about this thing. And this is, again, another thing I grapple with, right? Because your podcast, man, I love it. Hometown Friends. And it's like, damn, like I consider Barry he's not blood. I considered him family.
Yes.
And so forth. And most of these people I'm talking about were like instrumental to me growing up with Barry and my cousin Selwyn and Walter and Dexter. We traveled the city. You know, me and Walter, we once got stopped in Bed-Stuy by police officers and thrown up against the wall and searched. And, you know, this time, unlike the one time after school, I wasn't alone.
Right.
And, you know, I remember years back, I just texted him out of nowhere. It was heavy on my heart. And I think after George Floyd was murdered, I just texted him, yo, bro, we're men.
Fuck.
We're families, and we're here. And do you remember being put up against that wall and these police yelling at us? And it's like, damn, I had that with him, and and it's like, yo, we're here, bro.
Shit.
You know what I'm saying?
You survived. You survived together. You got through that time.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
it's not to be taken for granted because fucking George Floyd did not survive.
No. Right. So I've had like thousands of stories of those experiences. Like the dancing was the thing that we did together, but in between that, again, you're learning life, man. You're learning about relationships, you know what I'm saying? You know, if you're listening now, man, call your friend. Like, don't even think about the ranking. Just the first person that comes to your mind, just call that person out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Hometown Friends. Meeting Antoine Joyce at the Othering and Belonging Conference put on by the Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley was an experience for me that represents how all friendships and connections are formed and sustained. We had a mutual openness to meeting one another and a willingness to share ourselves and a curiosity about each other. Given that we were attending a conference on the topic of belonging, likely had something to do with our openness to meet, but the randomness of our meeting and our pursuit of this connection is emblematic of how all friendships are formed. Moreover, we both experienced in ourselves the way that our minds immediately make assumptions about other people and analyze their value to us and whether they look like somebody we would like to have in our lives or something in common with. Thankfully, we also both had enough exposure and experience with people that don't exactly look like us to reach out our hands and introduce ourselves. This simple practice led to a conversation with immediate feeling of comfort as we shared our stories and found out that our authentic, deep curiosity about each other was genuine. We both experienced what we were at the conference to learn, which is that humans have a tendency to cast other people and groups into irreconcilable terms, which is the process of othering. All humans yearn for connection and community, and yet we live in a time when calls for division along the well-established lines of race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, and political affiliation are pervasive, and they lead to fear and negative assumptions that divide our common goals of humanity. And this leads to authoritarianism to spring up across the globe, and is sustained without even questioning. The paradigm of belonging without othering is what Antoine and I and thousands of attendees were at the conference to learn. We must build institutions, cultivate practices, and orient ourselves to a shared future, not only to heal ourselves, but perhaps to save our planet. And I think the practice of cultivating friendships fits squarely into this paradigm. We all deserve to have a sense of belonging in our lives, and othering is the impediment to this goal. If you want more information about the OBI conferences, I'll put the link in the notes section of this episode. And if you resonate with this theory or this podcast, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Hometown Friends Pod. Or better yet, subscribe to the Hometown Friends YouTube channel and take the time to comment and share this podcast with your friends. Let's all stay connected and build bridges, not barriers.
We fall down, but we get up.